Hello and welcome to Stiff Peaks, a baking channel about macarons and other French treats by me, Katie Carolyn, out of my kitchen in Los Angeles. So, let's get going! Hey, welcome back to Stiff Peaks. I'm Katie.
I'm Alana.
And today we're baking macaroons. I know, crazy. And so they're gonna be Galaxy Macarons. I'm just gonna try to make them cool, like blue and purple swirly patterns in the white. And then I have no idea what a galaxy would taste like, but we will decide on the flavor later. So I hope you enjoy. So as always, you will need the same ingredients. For the food ingredients, you're going to need almond meal, powdered sugar, granulated sugar, and eggs.
And you will also need an electric stand mixer, some food coloring, parchment paper, and a scale.
And don't forget a pinch of salt. It makes a difference, just a little bit, not too liberal with it, but yeah. That just helps round out all the flavors.
So you're going to need 125 grams of room temperature egg whites, 125 grams of almond flour, 40 grams of granulated sugar, and 225 grams of powdered sugar. And the almond flour and powdered sugar need to be sifted 3 times.
So we're just sifting through our dry ingredients, and the powdered sugar, it's super fine. It goes straight through your sieve and it works out fine. But you need to make sure that with your almond flour, when you are sifting it and weighing it, you are sifting it first, because probably about 1/3 to 1/2 of your almond flour will not go through the sift, and then you'll only be left with half of what you actually need if you were to weigh it before and then sift it. So there's a bunch of super chunky granules that we totally don't want, because that will just make your cookie bumpy and not smooth in your mouth. And that's not what you want, because macarons are supposed to be perfectly smooth, and the way you get that is by sifting a bunch of times. So you could say, oh, I'll skip the sifting because I'm just lazy and it'll be fine. But the thing is you'll be left with like these lumpy macaroons. Seriously, these little granules will make it lumpy. And then you'll just kind of be disappointed and feel like it didn't work right, but it's just because you didn't sift. So just sift, it'll make everything better. So while Alana finishes up the sifting, I am going to put my egg whites into the mixer with my granulated sugar and stir it on a low setting until I can tell that the granulated sugar is all dissolved into the egg whites. That's another reason you want your egg whites to be room temperature, because the colder they are, the harder it's going to be to dissolve all of the sugar in. And the way you can simply get your eggs to just warm up is to just get a bowl of hot water and put your fridge temperature eggs in it and just let it sit for a while. They'll warm up. It's very easy. At this point, I also like to take my parchment paper and line it up on some baking sheets and then put something heavy on top, just so the parchment paper won't curl up when I'm trying to pipe some really flat macaroons. It'll make them lumpy, you know? It'll just make them curve with the parchment paper. So yeah, parchment paper on probably about 2 baking sheets. If it's like your first time and you want to space them out really far, then just do 3 baking sheets and it should work out. So our egg whites and granulated sugar are well combined, and yes, she is still sifting. You have to sift 3 times. It really honestly makes a difference, because every time you'll see that there are granules that made it through that we don't want in our cookies. Anyway, so it's also important to note the color and the darkness of the baking sheet that you are using. So this is a very light colored silver, and that will cook the bottoms a little bit slower than a darker pan will. And that's just because the darker pans will gain heat faster, and so they will start cooking your cookies faster. So just note the difference. If all you have is dark pans, then maybe take a minute or 2 off of the cooking time. And let's say you have a dark pan and a light pan, that's fine. Just make sure you cook them at slightly different times. So now we can actually start whipping up our egg whites to form our stiff peaks. So just put it on high or almost high until you see it starts to get foamy, and then you see it starts to really get white, and then you gotta whip it until you have stiff peaks. Not super stiff, but stiff. And so that means that when you turn off your mixer and you flip it up, there's going to be a nice big white mound that has a nice stiff peak on it. So if you would shake it around, it would only wiggle very slightly. That's the consistency we're going for. So if you were to give it a shake, it really isn't going to move that much. It's pretty stiff. So once you have stiff peaks, then you want to slowly kind of incorporate all of your dry ingredients. So I usually scrape down the bowl and get all of the meringue into the center, and then I will put about a quarter of the dry mix in and mix it. Maybe you want to fold it, always fold, never mix, always fold. And you want to fold it maybe like 5 or 6 times, not a lot. You're not trying to incorporate all of that dry ingredient before you put it in the next, because then you will end up over stirring it, because you have kind of a limited amount of turns before it's overmixed. So I only mix in like 5 or 6 times, put in the next quarter, 5 or 6 times, put in the next quarter, because you're just trying to slowly incorporate it in, but you're not trying to mix it all the way. And then once you have all of your dry ingredients in, then you can end up going till the final mixes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get all the dry ingredients in, and once they're all sort of in there, I'm going to separate it into 2 batches, because I want to keep half white and I want to make half blue. And so the reason why I want to not fold it all the way is so that I can finish up stirring the white, but I can still have the final number of turns available, so I can get the blue all the way mixed in without over mixing it. Because once it's all the way done being mixed, if you try to add in your food coloring, then you're gonna over mix it, because you obviously need to mix in the food coloring. So it is kind of finicky. This is the part of making macaroons that is like the make it or break it. The did I over mix it or not? Because that's what's going to determine whether or not they have their little foot. Because if you over mix it, they're just gonna make a little puddle and not do anything. And if you undermix it, they're going to be lumpy. So you want them to be smooth enough, but also have the little foot. Yeah. So now that I have my blue and my white, I have a piping bag. You do not have to have a piping bag. A like freezer bag, Ziploc, works perfectly well. I just have this because like I'm into baking, and therefore buying it was worth it. But if you're not like a baker, then do not feel like this will make it any better. This will not change the outcome of your macaroons. So I have here a piping bag. I don't even know what number tip this is. I just looked at the hole and I was like, that seems about right. Maybe it was like a 6. I don't know. Maybe I'll measure it later. I'm just going to have Alana hold the bag, and I'm going to tip it one way and pour the blue down one side, and then tip it the other and pour the white down the other. So now that we have finished piping and we have our pretty swirls, obviously not all of them turned out as swirls. Some of these are just blue, which is totally fine, because remember, all of your error macaroons just end up being the bottom cookie on the little cookie sandwich. So it's great. As long as you're like 50-50 on like okay ones, you'll be fine. So also, now we have to wait. You have to wait probably 30 to 45 minutes, depending on like the humidity of where you are, for these to dry. The thing that is the most important in the making of the little foot, which is the little like puffy area that comes out when you cook them and they rise up, the way that happens is the tops of the macaroons dry out, and so they get tacky and they get just like a little skin on them, and so they don't pull apart when they start to bake. But if you were to just put them in right now, the whole thing, there's nothing holding them together, and they would just balloon up in all directions, and they would crack and they wouldn't look that great. So the way you get the foot is you let them get this little skin on top, so that holds them together, so the only place it has to go is right on the bottom, and it rises up. So take a toothpick, pop all the bubbles that you see, and then wait for like a half hour for the skins to form on top. So for the inside, we really thought a lot about it, conferred with our dad, and figured out that a Oreo cookies and cream would be the best, because the Milky Way would be like the white part, and then like little asteroids would be the little chunks within it. And we thought it was cute, and it was like the closest thing to like a galaxy themed filling that we could think of. So we're gonna do that. I found a recipe on Recipe Girl, and it's just for the cookies and cream frosting, but what I'm gonna do is add, instead of whipping cream, heavy whipping cream, because we want it to be a little bit thicker. Also, I'm just gonna add probably a little bit less of it, just because we don't want it to be as fluffy as hers probably is. We want it to be a little bit more dense, so that when you bite into it, it doesn't squish out the sides. For ingredients, you're going to need 3 cups of powdered sugar, 1 cup of salted butter at room temperature, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 tablespoon of heavy whipping cream,
and 12 Oreos that are finely crumbed.
So we have our cookies and cream filler, and it tastes great. So now we get to put these in the oven, which is great. So we get to about 320 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 14 minutes. You'll see the little foot come up in the first few minutes. It's fun to watch because you get to feel like, oh, I did it. I made like the macaroon, right? When you take them out of the oven, make sure to get the parchment paper off of the baking sheet so that they don't keep cooking from the heat on the baking sheet. You want them to cool down as quickly as possible. And also don't try to peel them off because they're still going to be kind of gooey and not set up. And so you might just peel the top right off and leave the whole inside stuck to the parchment paper. So you want to let them cool off all the way. And so for the icing, you can just use like 2 spoons. So like 1 spoon in for the scoop, the second to just push off the first spoon. I'm just going to use a piping bag just because I got them out today, so I'm just going to use them. Usually I use the spoon method, but I felt like using bags today, so here we go. So our first tray is out of the oven, and they look so cute and great. They have the little feet, they're peeling right off. It's exactly what I wanted. So now what I'm going to do is I took a little bit of water and a pastry brush and some purple food coloring, and I just mixed it up to make just like this little, like it looks like a thin watercolor kind of thing. I'm just gonna get a little bit of this water food coloring mix, get it on the brush, and just flick it on. And then I find it really helpful to flip over half of your macaroons and then line them up with an equally sized top and just make a big row of those. So you get to just like take your icing, swirl it on the bottom, put it down, and put the top right on top, and you know that you're not going to be left with a tiny one and a huge one at the end. Also, you can print out a just like piece of paper with a bunch of circles and put it underneath your parchment paper if you really are too worried about getting them all to be the same size. They'll all be generally the same size. If you'll have one bigger, you'll usually have another one, and they'll go together and it'll be fine. And I guess they are made to look perfect, but mine never look perfect, and I'm okay with it. Just like boobs. They're never exactly the same, but we love them anyway. We did it! Woo! They look so good! I'm so proud of us. I'll show you a close-up on the swirl later, but it's awesome. And the little flex on top makes it look very out of this world. And then the filling is also flecky, and so it's just, they're great. They taste amazing. They're not too sweet, which sometimes can be a problem. And they just turned out really great. I'll throw in some like Vanity Photos right here. Yay, Vanity Photos. Woohoo. They look so good. So thanks for watching Stiff Peaks. I'm Katie Carolyn.
And I'm Alana Carolyn.
And we're so sweet and adorable. And yeah, bye.
Bye.
Yeah. That'll be great, Alana.
Great.
Great. Do you know what it means? Never mind.
I already forgot it. I think that was pretty good.